Hello, professor, classmates, friends, and family. I'm excited to share with you the highlights of my action research project that I have been completing for the past 8 months. The title of my action research project is Blending Sensory Strategies with Technology to Improve Behavior in Special Education Classrooms. So, as a special education teacher in a self-contained setting, and working with students who have moderate to severe disabilities, helping students regulate their sensory input throughout the day requires a lot of classroom time. This is something that can be done easily while working one-on-one with students because you can use a variety of very individualized strategies. However, it is impossible to be working one-on-one with students or multiple students at a time. Therefore, I look to incorporate sensory regulation practices into the classroom routine so that we can work on these skills as a whole class all together at the same time. A lot of educators are familiar with the idea of a sensory room. This is a room that features a variety of high tech, low tech, and no tech equipment aimed at helping sensory seeking students to regulate. Usually, these rooms have mats, squishy beanbag chairs, calming music. Frequently, the lights stay off in the room, which allows for the use of lamps or colored lights that are projected on the walls. However, sensory rooms require a lot of resources to set up, and therefore they're not an option for all schools and certainly not for most schools. This led me to my big what if. What if the simple use of sensory videos played during structured playtime and these students? My research was designed to answer the following questions. How do students prefer exposure to sensory videos compared to non-exposure during the 15-minute structured play routine? How does the usage of sensory videos affect the frequency of off-task behaviors in primary age students with special needs? And to what extent does the daily use of sensory videos improve primary aged students' ability to complete a structured work task following the period of structured play? This study was completed in a self-contained special education classroom serving primary-aged students with a variety of developmental disabilities. All students in this study were between the ages of 5 and 7. Prior to planning my research, I did a lot of studying of prior research that had been done. The literature shows a few key findings. Um, Whenever I am looking into or researching a topic, I like to start with the history so that we know where we're coming from. So, sensory regulation practices in education began in the 1950s within the field of occupational therapy. The theory of sensory integration became a foundational concept in understanding how our brain organizes and processes sensory messages from their environment. Sensory information such as touch, sound, movement, smell, or taste is experienced differently. For many students with disabilities, um, there are challenges in effectively processing the sensory inputs around. Therefore, this leads to difficulties maintaining focus, regulating emotions, and engaging in typical classroom activities. A study completed by Ziegler in 2015 shows that creating multisensory, stress-regulating environments can help children remain calm and reduces anxiety and ultimately promotes on-task behavior. Now, how have we figured out how to use technology when it comes to sensory regulation? Well, just like with a lot of the ways technology has impacted our world, technology has revolutionized the delivery of sensory regulation strategies, making them more accessible, engaging, and customizable for children. Digital tools can simulate sensory experiences that may be challenging to provide consistently in traditional classroom settings. One study done in 2017 describes how interactive media apps in early childhood education can deliver calming auditory, visual, and even tactile stimuli in order to support a child's sensory needs. Despite the numerous advantages of technology for sensory regulation, there are still criticisms. One concern is related to students developing an overdependence on technology in order to regulate their nervous system. Um, a study completed in 2018 warns that overconsumption of technology could lead to a lack of focus and a hindrance of attention span within classrooms, which is the exact opposite purpose of this study. So these concerns were absolutely considered in how technology was implemented into my action research and how the study was designed and how it was used and is still used in my classroom. On 10 of the days in this study, during the structured play period, a sensory video was displayed on an interactive whiteboard. If you're not familiar, a sensory video is a easily searchable video found on the internet, which usually includes a calming background noise. For this study, we sought to use videos with calming music in background that is paired with repetitive, frequently colorful, sometimes related to a theme visual of some sort. Students were then observed during the 15-minute work task. I took notes on each of the students' behaviors and later would take these notes in order to assign and a variety of rubrics in order to assign a quantitative data point for each student in this study. Then the class average for each day was found in order to compare the class scores for on days with a sensory video, and off days without a sensory video. And that is how this study came to the conclusions that it came to. As with all research, there were limitations and challenges that arose. The first limitation is the very small sample size. While this research informs the decisions I make in my classroom, it is important to note that 8 students is not enough students to make generalized claims about how sensory videos impact students in general. In addition, throughout this study, I took note of the fact that there were other environmental stimuli that were interrupting the impact of the sensory videos used. Some examples that I can think of were adult conversation in a special education classroom. It is not uncommon to have multiple adults in a classroom at a time, to have students coming in and out for their related services. And that absolutely was environmental stimuli, right? Noise and also kind of visual disruption that could be disruptive to this structured play period. In addition, I noted that the air conditioning was running on certain days, and that left kind of this background environmental sound that could disrupt the effects of the sensory videos and the effects that I was trying to create with the sensory video. In addition, I think it's important to note that student mood and behavior is impacted by a variety of situations, and it's impossible to control for all of those things. And therefore, I took the results of this study as simply not a fix or even an attempt to fix student behavior, but rather a tool to simply improve, right? Whatever the student's baseline is for that day, right? How can we just make it better? I can't always fix it, but how can we help to make it more pleasurable to be in the classroom? The exciting part of my study is the findings. The results of my study showed that students in my classroom reported higher mood, had fewer instances of off-task behavior, and completed their task at a higher rate on days that utilized the sensory video, as opposed to the days that did. The impact was small, and there were definitely challenges with behavior even on days that utilized sensory videos. However, over the course of the 20 days of this study, the class averages showed more desirable results on days with a sensory video. The use of sensory videos should not replace traditional sensory regulating and individualized strategies. We should still be seeking out individualized ways to help our students with sensory regulating sensitivities. However, the use of sensory videos, at least for my classroom, proved to be a low cost and low effort strategy that helped improve whole class success. It is certainly a strategy that I plan to continue to use this school year with my classroom. And of course, I plan to use it thoughtfully. So it's not that there's a sensory video on all day long, but during periods such as structured play, when we might need to kind of come together as a classroom and find some calm, find some inner peace. A sensory video is a tool at my disposal to use in order to help us reach that. Ultimately, I had a lot of fun thinking about and planning my action research in the classroom. It really highlighted for me how important it is to be, tweaking things about our teaching practice, to pay attention to the results of those changes that we make in our practices so that we might be better informed by how those strategies are used in the classroom so that we can continue to make choices that benefit the students and student success ultimately. If we are not open to the feedback that our students are giving us, whether it be through their behavior, whether it be through their test scores, if we're not open to that feedback and willing to change our practice as educators, then we're going to fall behind and we're going to be missing out on effectiveness in the classroom. And so I found action research and the learning about the process of action research really helpful to my own practice as an educator. Thank you so much for being here, for listening to my presentation, for sharing with me and celebrating completing my action research this past college year. I look forward to continuing to learn how I can better meet my students' needs through a deeper understanding of the action research process. Thank you.